Welcome back to WDRB Media, the voice of the community. And those streaming live from TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, or just on your laptops at WDRBmedia.com, you're listening to A New Day. And we're your hosts, Juicy J.
Oh, my goodness. And Mr. Bay.
And if you're just tuning in, we're talking about inappropriate sex. It's time to break the hex.
Yes, yes.
And we ended that first segment. We were discussing Bill Cosby and the verdict that has just come in, where he has been sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison for some sexual allegations. I'm still saying allegations that took place back in 2004. But
allegations. If you got sentenced, that's a fact.
I don't know. I guess because the little bit that I did listen to, and I didn't listen to a lot of it because at one point I really did get sick of hearing about it, and I stopped listening when one of the women said that she could not recall anything. And for me, that was a true problem, because I feel as if it's hard for me to accuse someone 20 years ago, give or take, and I can't remember anything. So whether or not, she's saying, okay, well, I woke up in his place and I was just discombobulated, and then, he put me in a cab and I went home, but I couldn't remember anything that happened between the time when she got there and when she woke up. So that was the biggest problem that I had.
But that was one woman.
That was one woman. And I really stopped listening after that. And I'm not going to say that Bill Cosby is 100% innocent. I won't sit here and say that. But I just know that whenever you have a lot of traumas, especially some sexual traumas, and it's to the point to where you want to accuse someone publicly in this way, you're going to remember.
Absolutely. I do agree with that.
You're going to remember details, because no matter how inebriated you may be, that sticks in your subconscious for a lifetime. That's just something that you'll never be able to forget. So that's where I lost interest in listening to it, because that frustrated me when I hear women that accuse men of things, especially when they're in the limelight, and then it come back to it, and then you can't recall.
But that's a whole nother story. I mean, those people, if you do have a person like that, they just lying, that's one thing. But on the other hand, you can't turn your eye if it's multiple people saying the same. Like, it's not going to be just multiple people showing up out of nowhere. Like,
that's true.
He drugged me and all that, because a lot of them actors and stuff like that, they like to get high, they like to party, and never know. Sometimes people say they blacked out. I don't truly always agree with that. I don't know, but then again, I haven't taken a lot of those drugs that maybe they've been taking, like Quaaludes, for example, and all those drugs they were taking back then to get high and party with. However, let's just not focus on Bill Cosby, because it was a lot of focus on him over the last years during this case or whatever. But I just feel like overall in the world right now, you have even with the Pope, where all these pedophilia things coming up in the church, not just in the Catholic Church, but pretty much every church.
Every church.
And so, it's bad that the Catholic Church, they got to take the brunt, but they are the lead. Is when it comes to Christianity, when it comes to religions, they're one of the largest churches on the face of the earth. So it's time, I think, that people need to be held accountable for their actions.
I definitely agree with that.
And speaking of which, like, I had back to the situation that I was made aware of. Actually, one of the ladies who told me, it was her daughter. She was a friend of mine, so I knew this person very closely.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know, in my spirit, it kind of rattled me a little bit. I decided to do a live video over the weekend, and just talk about things that happened to me in my past regarding to my sexual evolution as a child going into adulthood, and how I was basically at a young age, I was introduced to sex by my uncles and my uncles mainly, and maybe older cousins, but mainly like a couple of my uncles in particularly, because they were so adamant about us not being gay that they introduced us to pornography and different things like that, and they were drilling us like, how many girls you got? Like, if we had a girlfriend, they would give us money, So their whole thing was I ain't about to have no gay nephews or whatever. So
Okay.
that's the time that they was in. I'm not saying that they was right or that they was wrong, but at the same time, you know, I feel like looking back, maybe there was, you know, some fear. Maybe there was wrong, but maybe that's how they was taught.
That's
so,
true.
You know, if this never gets checked, if it's never, you know, and to this day, like, I never went back to my uncles and say, why'd you do that?
Why did you do that?
You know, is this something that we just grew out of, or whatever, and it just went unnoticed, you know? And then I could think about the times where I was inappropriate with some of my family members, sexually, with women, not females, should I say. But at the same time, there was a lot of shame that came with that and guilt that I carried for a lot of years. And it wasn't until I was older, until I was able to look at that and say, whoa, like, maybe that was some of the issues I had to deal with through sex. I had to heal through that, and I had to forgive myself for that, because I was young and I was being influenced by elders, you know, my elders.
The elders and the family.
Yeah, I mean, they would have killed us if they would have found out, you know, some of the stuff we were doing, you know, as kids. You can't watch children all the time.
That's true.
And I think a lot of children are sexually, they are curious, you know. They I think we are sexual beings. Like, we came here through sex. So I want to make that clear. So the fact that you have desires around it or anything like that, it's nothing wrong with it. But I think when it gets perverted, and when you start as an adult and you start to want to take advantage of children or force your will against someone else's will, that's when I see the problem. And I feel like, you know, the children need to have a choice. Until they get to a certain age, maybe they don't need to be exposed to certain things until they get to a level of maturity where they can receive it and they can know how to stand in their own power, and they make their own choice.
And they should be able to make their own choice.
And so, yeah, I did the live video, you know, and I didn't know what I was really going to talk about, but I knew I had to be real about it, because I know in my family, even in my family, where there was incest with, you know, my grandfather and his daughters, my aunts, you know, and it was a well-known secret, but I don't think it ever got dealt with. My grandfather, he never went to jail or nothing like that. My grandmother, it was like...
Well, you know, it was I think back in those times, you know, it was just nobody wanted to bring shame to the family. So you always either kept it internally within the family, or you just never really said anything at all.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you know, I guess now in this time we can say, well, that's not fair or it shouldn't have been done. But, you know, that's just what they were taught. So,
right.
You know, that's where that saying comes from. You know, if you know better, you'll do better. So, again, hence the title in which we have, well, you know, it's time to break the hex. So my thing is, how do we, as much as we like to be involved in the community, how do we help those that may have these sexual traumas, and as they get older, they still live within those, and when they think that it's okay? I think that's the biggest question.
Well, first, I think that it's the individual that must come to the realization that there is something wrong, and that they do maybe need to look at how they channeling their sexual energy, and if it's appropriate or if it's not appropriate. Because, you know, in certain countries, they have children that marry grown men.
Grown men, like with the women, as soon as they, I mean, with young ladies, as soon as they start their menses, absolutely.
Right, and so we can look at that and say, well, those people are wrong. I'm not really here to say what's right and wrong as far as culturally speaking, in a sense, because, you know, at the end of the day, I think you're going to be judged by your heart and your intent. So I guess they need to get some type of psychological help, you know, whether it's some type of programs. We need to look into that, man. I don't know. I know some programs that I went through. Maybe when we come back off the break, I can share a little bit about some things that I did to kind of deal with my own self. But as far as those people, they, you know, I'm sure that there's psychiatrists out there, well, doctors out there, counselors out there, people that they can go talk to and try to get some help for themselves and some healing for themselves, so that they don't have to keep perpetuating those things that may have happened to them that they have not came into terms with, you know, as far as controlling themselves sexually, because that's a powerful urge, that we have as human beings. And a lot of times, if we're not disciplined how to deal with those urges, we can find ourselves doing things that maybe will be outside of our character.
Our character.
Yeah. So we can break, but when we come back, I definitely want to try to see if we can come up with some ideas, or lead some people into the direction of some healing for themselves.
All right. Well, you're listening to WDRB Media, the voice of your community. You're listening to A New Day, and I'm your host, Juicy J.
And Mr. Bay.
We're discussing inappropriate sex. It's time to break the hex. So we're going to pay a few bills with a couple of commercials, play a little music. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back.